I think success in a large measure is how you think God would look at you, how you think the community would look at you, even how your competitors would look at you.
Oscar C. Boldt knows a little something about success. He's the chairman of a company projecting more than $700 million in sales. As his family-owned construction company celebrates its 125th anniversary, we take a look at how Boldt's success has impacted America. Boldt has built a workforce of 3,000, providing good jobs that have fueled local economies for 4 generations. Boldt builds value for customers across the country, constructing the buildings where we learn, heal, enjoy ourselves, and provide necessities such as light and heat. All the while, Boldt builds communities, making philanthropic contributions that support and enrich the community experience.
It's a demonstration of a commitment that you have made to yourself, that you're going to try to be as good as you can be. And in the course of that, you build good structures, you build communities, you participate in the communities every way you can.
This is the story of one family-owned company, told on the backdrop of a changing American economy. It's a story of struggles, vision, innovation, hard work, and dedication.
What we need in America is more companies like Boldt.
We invite you to experience the Boldt story, just one thread in the fabric of American exceptionalism.
The Boldt story, an example of American exceptionalism. The American spirit drove 19th century pioneers into the unknown. They were bursting with a desire to settle new territory, build strong communities, and provide for themselves and others.
My grandfather Martin was cut from that same cloth. He had that drive that said, if you don't go, you don't get.
Martin Boldt doesn't appear in history books, but he's one of those who personifies the rugged individualism that made America great. In 1889, this son of European immigrants left his family's farm in Brillion, Wisconsin, with little more than his talents, his values, and a dream. The 24-year-old began offering his carpenter services in the up-and-coming city of Appleton.
He knew what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. And when he made a bargain, he kept the bargain. And if it meant he had to work longer, he worked longer.
Building high-quality cabinets, wood products, and cisterns was his specialty. And instead of expecting customers to come to him, he delivered his products to farms miles away. Martin went on to build homes, develop his community, and he earned a reputation for honesty and reliability.
He knew what his values were, and he practiced them.
But the forces of man and nature seemed to conspire against him. Fire ravaged his original Martin Boldt carpenter shop. Resilient, he rebuilt it.
If you started with nothing, and you achieved something and you lost it, you already knew what you were supposed to do. You went back, you started over.
The challenges never seemed to let up. A panic in the stock market caused a financial crisis across the country. It contributed to an economic depression that lingered throughout the 1890s. Unemployment climbed to 20% after 500 banks and 15,000 businesses failed. Somehow, the Martin Boldt carpenter shop managed to survive those tough economic times. And as the country emerged from that depression, Martin's reputation allowed him to grow his business. He moved his shop to a new location and in time renamed it Martin Boldt and Sons.
His three sons had it driven into them that you're honest and you're going to be reliable and you're going to deliver what you say.
His sons, Arthur, Robert, and Oscar J., joined the business. OJ, as he was called, was just 14 years old. Those were the pioneer days of Appleton. Like the rest of the country, Appleton embraced innovation. The Boldts would go on to make some striking contributions of their own. Full of ideas and energy, at 21, OJ invented a better bowling pin, one less liable to damage.
That showed he had this creative mind that was working all the time.
By 1917, with World War I fully engaged, OJ joined the Army. Returning home from service, he assumed a managing role in the family business.
Call Oscar. When you think of building, your second thought should be, who can do the best job for me?
Martin Boldt and Sons expanded along with the rapidly growing economy of the Roaring '20s.
Martin Boldt and Sons, builders. Oscar J. Boldt, manager.
The 20s was a period of home building, and they were big in home building for a couple of reasons. I think they were good at it, but I think also they had a millwork shop in which they made their own doors and windows and cabinets.
The Builders Association of Wisconsin would name Martin one of its leaders. He was even mentioned in one of their songs.
There's Martin Boldt as their able president who likes to arrange things alone.
But in time, the music would stop for Martin Boldt and Sons. The seeds of misfortune had been planted in 1924 when OJ built a bakery called the Modern Bakery.
After OJ finished the construction, the owner found he couldn't pay for the building. And that was a major setback, but the economy was strong at the time, and my father thought he could overcome the loss.
OJ bought the bakery in bankruptcy and sold it to a man named Richard Wall, agreeing to take payments in monthly installments. Turning his attention back towards innovation, OJ then acquired a second patent, and he and his wife Dorothy celebrated the birth of their first child. Oscar Charles Boldt wasn't just born into the construction business, he was born for it.
I swear from the time I was 4, I never wanted to do anything except construction.
With the American economy trending upwards, Boldt transitioned more from housing to commercial work. A big commercial job came in 1929.
For some reason, my father became concerned about payment for it.
OJ even drove to Chicago to get payment from the store owners. It was a good thing he did. Not long after, the stock market crashed. The Great Depression began, and the furniture store went out of business.
And there were a lot of businesses that failed. And there were a lot of them that came through the Depression alive but on life support.
Boldt was fortunate to secure a big contract. The Furman canning plant in Appleton helped Boldt stave off the effects of the Depression for a while. OJ brought his 5-year-old son Oscar to the construction site and sat him atop a fence post to watch the work.
When I was on top of that fence post, that was as much world as I had seen. And it was exciting for me.
Boldt's hard work and honesty impressed Mr. Furman, but the stalling economy would soon catch up with Boldt. O.J. took over the family business in 1931 and renamed it Oscar J. Boldt Construction Company. He had it incorporated to limit financial exposure in case of bankruptcy, something always on O.J.'s mind.
In another world, at another time, he might have been a huge success, but the Depression took down a lot of people.
As the Depression dragged on, Mr. Wall could no longer make his monthly payments. Their deal fell through. O.J. decided to operate the bakery with his in-laws, but it attracted more hopeful workers than paying customers.
In my father's case, he was head over heels in the Depression, and if you haven't gone through it, you can't possibly sense the anxiety that creates.
Desperate, O.J. trucked bread 90 miles outside Appleton and sold it for 4 to 5 cents a loaf on credit.
Didn't get paid for it, ever. But when I read through all of these sales slips, I somehow recapture this hope that, well, these are good people, they will pay, and they would have if they could have, but they didn't. Well, that was the story of our life through the Depression years.
Within a year, the bakery washed out much of the family's liquid assets. The Boldts traded construction labor for basic necessities.
During the Depression, there was very few people who had money to buy anything with. So there was a good deal of bartering going on. If you had labor, you might be able to trade that for milk. Or in our case, we already had the bread for a while. And as a result, we ate a lot of milk toast. My mother would deny that, but we did.
During the peak of the Great Depression, the unemployment rate rose to about 25%. With no continuity of work, Oscar J. Boldt Construction was on the brink. Then, an answer to their prayers. Mr. Furman called again and hired O.J. to build another canning factory, this time in Lanark, Illinois.
This is like building the World Trade Center. It wasn't that big, but for us, it was real, live, honest construction. That didn't save us, but it gave us some life support.
As O.J. worked hard to bring the company back to life, a shocking event would claim a life in the Boldt family. A car struck and killed Martin as he walked home from the grocery store. The driver said he was blinded by the sun's glare.
I've never been one to cry very much, but I sure had an exercise in crying then. I loved my father, but I adored my grandfather, and I tried to emulate everything that he was. And he never let me down. You know, he was honest, he was hardworking, he was understanding.
Oscar's world changed. 6 months later, the world would change. Hitler invaded Poland, and World War II erupted. The American economy began to quicken. War materials were in demand. In time, Boldt would attempt to play a role in filling that demand. On December 7th of 1941, the Japanese launched a surprise air attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. America entered World War II. O.J. competed for and won a military contract to build wooden artillery shell boxes. Unable to afford new equipment, Oscar watched as his father and uncles recycled parts from old machinery and built the equipment needed to craft the boxes.
And they made 1,000 shell boxes a day. That would be a railroad carload. And what helped them was that they got a second contract for a different shape of crate. And so they used the waste from the first contract to build the second one.
As O.J. supported the war effort in this way, Oscar would soon be joining the fight.
The year was 1943. After finishing his freshman year at the UW-Madison School of Engineering, Oscar volunteered to serve with the 15th Air Force.
I got to be a good navigator, and I used to be able to tell them when we would arrive back from a mission within 1 minute.
Oscar and his crew successfully completed 18 combat missions. His training as a navigator became a part of most every decision he would make in later years, including the construction business. From knowing how much energy it would take to accomplish a task to always thinking strategically.
Every time we went on a mission, we had a target. But if we couldn't bomb that target, we had what they called the alternate target. I never thought in terms of finality. I always thought, we're going to do this, but if we can't do this, then we're going to do that. Well, that really existed in construction much more frequently than I imagined.
World War II ended by the fall of 1945. Before graduating from UW-Madison, Oscar met Pat on a blind date.
And talk about blind date, I did not wear my glasses that night.
Neither would say it was love at first sight, but in time, sparks ignited the more they talked about family, faith, and their dreams for the future.
Saying one night when we were driving up College Avenue, I knew exactly where it was. And he said, well, I want to build up a business, and I want to be able to provide jobs for people, and good jobs. And I thought, that's really, rather than building a company so that I or we would financially be the recipients of this, but that it was more of a community building philosophy.
Their love grew.
We got engaged in, 48?
It was December 19th, 1947, and I want to tell that story.
Oh, I can't even get the year right.
O.C. was in the middle of asking me to marry him, and the phone rang. He got up and answered it. And after he'd finished with the phone call, he came back and finished the proposal.
Well, there haven't been that many times when the phone rang and somebody wanted to hire me. The phone rings, you go answer it.
Yeah, so
you can't miss any chances.
Right.
But I think it worked out okay.
Oh, sure.
He and Pat started their family in 1950, the same year Oscar became CEO of Boldt.
I took over at a point where my father became ill, and it was a challenge to handle that and then be trying to grow the company at the same time, because there was a period where he was actively ill.
The small operation had declined to an annual volume of less than $100,000. Attempting to bid larger projects, Oscar felt he needed more equipment, but he couldn't afford it. After being rejected by other banks, Gus Solke, the president of the Appleton State Bank, approved Oscar's $30,000 loan. A long and healthy banking relationship began.
He had faith in me and in us at a time a lot of other people didn't.
Determined to reinvent the company, Oscar tapped new markets. Boldt entered the educational field and made the difficult leap to more complicated construction jobs, most notably in the pulp and paper industry. O.J. worried that Oscar was in over his head.
He had every right to be nervous because I was taking real risks, not little ones, big ones.
Failure on any job could have bankrupted the company. By 1957, Boldt grew new business at a time when industrial and commercial building was declining sharply across the country. Boldt hired more workers.
When I first started here, I probably could have recited the names of everyone on the payroll because I did their checks. Obviously, as we started growing, that was no longer a possibility.
We were fortunate in hiring people who had experience in paper mills, and we went from small jobs that we performed well to larger jobs.
A breakthrough job came when Tillmany Papers awarded Boldt the number 13 paper machine installation. Superintendent Lawrence Hackle managed most of the work there.
The nice thing about a Lawrence Hackle job was if Lawrence said it was finished, he had weeded the garden, it was finished. You didn't have to go back and send another crew in.
A valuable trait on any job, especially paper machine installations, which require precision within 1,000th of an inch and a great deal of heavy lifting.
Some of the Yankee dryers weighed 200 tons. We're not talking 200 pounds, we're talking 200 tons. And so it took special equipment, special people to rig these pieces of equipment into operation. Then all the electronics and all the piping that went by it was pretty substantial.
Boldt would go on to earn a national reputation for a time as the #1 paper machinery installer in the country. Like his father before him, Oscar brought his children to job sites.
My dad had taken me to Ripon College, where we were building a dormitory. He was introducing me to the business very early.
At 5 years old, Tom drew this picture.
And I'm very proud to say that every workman on the job has a hard hat. It seems to be a flat hard hat, not a rounded hard hat. But they're all working away.
Their hands and talents helped put Boldt on the map. By the end of the decade, the company would grow its sales to $22 million and become ranked 292 on a blue ribbon list of the nation's 400 largest contractors.
As we were growing, we also tried to support our communities.
The fundraising for the Appleton YMCA's new facility in 1965 found itself $500,000 short. Boldt constructed the building as designed and never billed for the shortfall.
So we would not have been able to absorb that type of debt, and we would have to have probably waited another couple of years to raise that money to be able to build a building. But the community needed the YMCA services, so Oscar and the Boldt company stepped forward at that time to cover all of those additional expenses.
Not an uncommon practice for Boldt.
You can't have institutions like the Y and the church and all of that without help. To the degree that we could help, we helped. We discovered that you could give a lot more away if you just chose to do it.
In 1967, Oscar got an idea novel in its day, to offer profit sharing.
I thought that we would succeed, and if we succeeded, that we ought to make it possible for people working for us to succeed.
He held a meeting with employees.
And he was going on and on about how great this profit sharing was, and nobody was really paying a whole lot of attention to it. Because all I could think about is I got to get back to work. I don't have time for this stuff.
I had the privilege of administering the retirement plan in later years. I had many people say to me, I never thought I would have this much money. Oscar was indeed foresighted to think of that benefit for all of his employees, and there are many retirees today who are living a much better life than they would have otherwise.
O.J., however, would not live long enough to see how Oscar's hard work would pay off. In the late winter of 1970, O.J. died peacefully in a rocking chair. At the time, Boldt was bidding on the Kimberly-Clark West Research Center.
Turns out that the bid had to be turned in the day after my father's funeral.
In his grief, Oscar managed to finish the bid and won the contract. The job became the platform for much larger and more diverse projects. Boldt expanded its industrial construction presence and began building hospitals.
We took huge risks, and we entered fields in which we were novices in the beginning and got to be leaders in those fields.
Boldt opened his first branch office in central Wisconsin. But as the company began making bigger strides, the 1973 recession hit America hard. The 70s became a period of economic stagflation, where high unemployment coincided with high inflation. One owner on a big job in Green Bay was slow to pay.
Oscar was running out of money, and he told me that he had to get a mortgage on his house so he could make the payroll.
On top of that, the oil crisis had Americans rationing gas, a challenge for some Boldt workers who had to drive 60 miles a day to finish construction on the Green Bay sewage treatment plant.
Running back and forth between Appleton and Green Bay, you go to a gas station, they wouldn't give you any more than 10 gallons of gas. And we were going back and forth, me and another guy were going back and forth every day. Well, this one gas station says, well, I'm not supposed to give this to you, but I know that what you guys are doing, so I'll fill you up every morning when you come in. So that's how we got enough gas so we can get the Green Bay to get the job done.
Warren Parsons joined Boldt in 1976 as treasurer. Coming from Kimberly-Clark, he brought with him skills, ideas, and relationships that helped Boldt weather the recession. Warren also led the effort to grow Boldt's IT infrastructure at the start of the computer age. Soon, the next generation of Boldts entered the family business, with Chuck coming on board in project management and Tom joining Boldt's marketing department.
I think we're a very collaborative kind of company, so I felt comfortable that certainly the best mentor that I ever had was my dad, and he was still very active and vibrant and supportive. In a family business, it's difficult, if not impossible, to park the family business at the door when you come in. We're constantly talking about business, and maybe for some people it gets to be boring, but for us, it's fun, it's exciting, and we enjoy the different problem solving and the challenges that presents.
Since the day I walked in the door, I really considered this company to be visionary.
The construction management movement had been very gradually gaining traction in the U.S. throughout the 60s and 70s.
Part of construction management is to find a way to do a particular phase of the construction cheaper, better, faster.
Oscar honed in on one way to reduce costly redesigns on the architect's plan.
Sometimes the building will be designed in such a way that it's an invitation for disaster. If there was an architect who would allow us to help them with their design, we could eliminate a lot of grief for them and ourselves as well.
He hired a staff architect and some engineers to consult on projects from a peer perspective. The result? Boldt worked more efficiently and quicker, saving money for customers while maintaining quality. Boldt continued to look for and embrace new ideas, as well as new opportunities.
We took a trip over to Saudi to scout out what was there. We met a number of the people.
Oscar took Tom on a business trip to Saudi Arabia in 1977 with the prospect of building hospitals. The capital, Riyadh, was in a period of growth and modernization.
It was a really exciting time because so many things were happening.
Tom stayed in Riyadh for 7 months. Along with 9 other Boldt employees, they built a truck maintenance facility outside of Riyadh.
And we would work 10, 12 hours a day. We didn't think there was anything else to do.
While the work in Saudi Arabia wasn't significant from a volume standpoint, it did have a huge impact on the company's public image back in the States, something Boldt would leverage to its benefit during the interview process for Methodist Hospital in Memphis.
The chairman of the board looked at me and he said, Mr. Boldt, he said, Memphis is a long way from Appleton. I said, Mr. Chair, last week I was in Saudi Arabia and this is almost in our backyard. We don't think there'll be any problem at all. Well, with that, we had sold the job, and maybe he liked my smile, maybe he liked my answer. I don't know what. But it was a very successful project, and we got several, 1, 2, 3 more with them. We did a lot of work in Mississippi after that.
All the while, the company expanded its reach throughout the Midwest and South. Boldt opened its second branch office in Cloquet, Minnesota in 1978.
Because we were doing work in that area, it became logical for us to develop a staff that could serve those particular customers.
Our growth in the 80s and 90s basically was focused again around the principles of values of satisfying the customer and providing quality work.
Throughout the 80s, Oscar and the other executives traveled, met with customers, and built relationships. Chuck left the company to pursue other interests. Warren became president of the company in 1988. Under his leadership, sales would increase from $50 million to $300 million in a 15-year period.
The growth was slow, steady, methodic, and growth we could maintain. And a lot of that growth was in the industrial portion of the marketplace in the paper industry.
In the years and decades ahead, Boldt would open several more offices near established customers, including 2 branches in Oklahoma.
And it didn't take us long to realize that this was a good place for us to do business. We fit in. They welcomed us with open arms. We felt they were looking for the values that we stood for.
It's been my 25-year experience with Boldt, and part of the reason that drew me to the company is their values, the honesty, and we talk a lot about the words on the wall and how we do things at Boldt, and I think we've always distinguished ourselves in the honesty and fairness and love of construction.
These values embody a lot of ways in which our employees can find meaning in what they do and then translate that to the work that they do with their customers.
Boldt, meanwhile, continued to build upon its heavy industrial presence and established a long-sought relationship with Consolidated Papers.
The entire Consolidated relationship, it was a study in just that, relationships, and it really was. We had a business development person by the name of Harley Barney who knocked on Consolidated's door for years, and finally they gave us an opportunity, and we performed. We did a wonderful job, and they entrusted us with every new paper machine they did from that point forward.
Straight out of college in 1994, Karen Newhouse was part of the crew that installed Consolidated's number 16 paper machine in Wisconsin Rapids, a $500 million project.
At one point, that paper mill, we had in construction, I believe, almost 3,000 people. And it was amazing. You got the sense from all those people that they were very proud of what they did.
On time and on budget, the machine was running in 26 months, making saleable paper of high quality, a record in the industry. But unbeknownst to anyone at the time, a crisis in the paper industry lay ahead. Knowing how to manage a crisis has always been one of Boldt's strengths. April 19th, 1995.
But if you were just joining us at 9 o'clock this morning, an explosion occurred at the Alfred Murrah Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City.
The Oklahoma City bombing shocked and rocked the country.
A blast that was felt for miles away, devices inside the building.
Boldt's office was 8 miles from the Murrah building.
There you can see as the building was just simply cut away by this huge explosion.
Boldt immediately shut down all its jobs in the city and brought 100 workers with equipment to the bombing site.
We were supporting the effort to keep the building standing. The building was in imminent danger of falling down.
Boldt operated 2 12-hour shifts, helping to ensure the building would not collapse on rescue teams. On the 3rd night, within the bombed-out military recruiting office of the Federal Building, rescuers found the body of a Marine sergeant. He was still sitting at his desk.
It was 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It had been cold, it had been rainy. The fog is kind of laying close to the ground. A full dress Marine honor guard came from the east end, came all the way down the street. They went into the building and brought the body out, put it on a gurney, and marched that slow march all the way up the street with people saluting and taps playing, and it was very, very emotional.
Well into their efforts, FEMA called Boldt to find out how much the company would charge for its work.
I remember saying to him, it seems to me that it would be obscene for anybody to charge anything under these circumstances, and that we would do whatever we could, as long as it took.
Boldt stayed until the end. The cost of the company, $300,000. Boldt never sent a bill to anyone. In the late 90s, Boldt was chosen to build Oklahoma City's popular tourist attraction, the Bricktown Ballpark. It was the first of several capital improvement programs for Oklahoma City.
The success of the baseball park, not only for the city, but for Boldt, kind of launched us into the bigger time.
Soon after, Boldt built another tourist attraction, the Bricktown Canal, Oklahoma City's airport terminal expansion, and the construction of many schools came in the decade ahead, building up Boldt's reputation in diverse markets.
I think we're wanting to continue to push forward and meet new challenges and really explore what the potential that we have as a company.
A pivotal time of change came in 1998. Tom became CEO and the 4th generation of Boldts to lead the company. Oscar stepped into the role of chairman. Soon after, Warren approached Bob DeCook, an experienced paper industry executive, to join Boldt's leadership team as Chief Operating Officer.
You get a very good feeling for the culture and the values. And they did fit the way I do things, what's important to me.
Warren planned to retire and wanted Bob in his place as his successor. After he accepted, Bob got an unforgettable call from Warren.
And I just thought it was him calling me to say, Bob, we're happy to have you, et cetera, et cetera. It didn't turn out to be the call. Warren said to me, I just came back from my physician and I've been diagnosed with cancer. And he said, we need to have you come and help, but I don't know how much availability I'm going to have and how long I'll be around. So that was a shocking call.
Those were difficult times to go through because Warren wasn't only a business associate and a true professional, he was a real gentleman and a real friend.
Bob helped Warren when he was too weak from chemotherapy to work. Towards the end, Warren relied entirely on Bob to handle the day-to-day operations. In time, Bob became president of the company. With the new executive team in place, Boldt focused on taking strategic planning to a new level.
And one of the early strategic planning goals was to find a way to increase productivity by 1%, which in the whole scheme of things doesn't sound like much, but from where we were and where the industry is, it was a big deal.
So keep it simple.
Bob and Tom tapped Paul Reiser to look into translating Toyota's approach to manufacturing to the construction industry. A challenge because unlike manufacturing, in construction, locations, conditions, and workers are always changing.
What differentiated Boldt to a great extent was we weren't afraid to try it. We weren't afraid to innovate.
The approach is known as lean.
And lean is strictly nothing more than let's try to identify where that waste is coming from. Let's drive it out of the process that'll help make us more efficient and make us more productive.
It's a simple concept to describe. It's a very complex system to implement and to achieve the results.
As Paul initiated Boldt's lean journey, market changes in the pulp and paper industry caught many in Wisconsin off guard. The pulp and paper industry began to decline quicker than anyone predicted, all in response to weakening demand.
It happened over a period of less than 5 years. And to adjust, into different market sectors was, to some was impossible. Some companies folded.
At its peak, the industry accounted for 75% of Boldt's business.
After that last major expansion, it became clear that some things were changing rapidly in that industry and that we needed to find an alternative.
But you realize in this kind of a company that you have a whole workforce that relies on you for a job so they can feed their families and live a good life. And that's a real responsibility.
Well, it was very important for us to consider very sophisticated, again, technically oriented kind of businesses that we could go to take the place of the paper industry, because that was the nature of the employee base that we had.
They determined they could parlay their workers' core construction skills and experience with paper mill power plants into select sectors of the power industry.
In the early days, it was a little hard convincing power people that that was true, so we had to say to them, well, give us a chance. And in all of those cases, when they gave us a chance, our people performed.
I can remember a fellow from Calpine that we worked with that he also had been in a paper industry, and he looked at us and he said, if you guys can work a paper industry project, that's much more complicated than what we're doing here in power, so I will give Boldt a thumbs up. They ought to be able to do this stuff. So that was really helpful.
Boldt gained a foothold in power and later in renewable energy markets across the Midwest. In 1999, E&R ranked Boldt number 81 among the largest construction firms in America. Soon after, Boldt expanded. In addition to offering construction and technical services, it began offering program management and development services and renamed itself the Boldt Company. Before the turn of the 21st century, Boldt made strides in its lean journey. First by becoming an early member of the Lean Construction Institute, then by improving upon lean construction principles.
One of the things we have in lean is go slow to go fast.
So this whole system we built is a system that reduces the errors as much as we can. This is a very complex business, and there are lots of ways that it can go wrong.
In construction, we're known for being problem solvers, and there is always a new problem. We do not have a shortage of problems. And it's so much fun to get the team together and to figure out how best to solve that problem.
Boldt pioneered and trademarked Integrated Lean Project Delivery, ILPD. It's named for an innovative method that brings the construction firm, architect, engineers, and all the trade partners under one contract to work as a team with the owner.
So in the past, companies and contractors were working, and architects were all working under separate contracts. And so everybody was very focused on optimizing their own piece of the project. How can I make it best for myself? How can I get our work done the fastest? And oftentimes that happened, but it sacrificed the performance of the entire team.
Using ILPD, the team shares in the risks and the rewards. It requires a culture of collaboration, honesty, and accountability, a natural fit for Boldt. That's often difficult for those who don't practice true collaboration.
Like you said, the words that are on the wall really are more than just words, but they are the values that we live each and every day, and it's how we approach our business.
Paul and Dave Kiewit put the ILPD theory into practice in 2006 on Store Enzo's number 64 paper machine rebuild in Whiting. Using ILPD, Boldt got the complicated job done 9 days sooner than typically scheduled and saved the customers $6 million.
And here we had the opportunity to take all these practices. We were able to apply them to the greatest of our ability at that particular point in time. Again, we were just in the infancy stages of developing a lot of these things. But the results that it produced were tremendous. I mean, they went beyond anything we could have ever dreamed of.
That same year, again using ILPD, Boldt completed the Shawano Ambulatory Care Center built for the Theta Care Health System.
When we start together as a team, then we work together and we work through problems together. And the Shawano project is a great example where we actually cut 3 months off the total build time on that project, which allowed us 70 more days of seeing patients because we were 3 months to the better. That's real money.
This integrated lean project delivery touches all of the business sectors that we work in. Some are more prepared for it and further along than others. Healthcare is a sector that has really grabbed onto this.
Sutter Health, a major health network in California, learned of Boldt when Paul presented ILPD at an industry workshop.
And we shared some of our successes and our failures. We shared our learnings. And through that process, we got to meet Sutter Health. And Sutter Health was just starting their lean journey back in early 2001, 2002. They had about $7 billion worth of projects that they needed to do. They were experiencing the same kind of breakdown that we had experienced in the industry traditionally, projects that were over budget and behind schedule. And they were looking for a new way to deliver projects also.
Interested in seeing ILPD in practice, Sutter hired Boldt to build a medical office building in Fairfield. Boldt delivered value, completing the project ahead of schedule and under budget.
Trust may be given, but it really is earned. And I think in this relationship, Boldt has more than earned that trust.
Trusting in Boldt, Sutter would go on to make an unusual move. It terminated its original general contractor, who was under contract on 2 new Sutter hospitals, and hired Boldt to rescue those projects from their mismanaged budgets and schedules. One was the Sacramento Medical Center, the other, Cathedral Hill Hospital in San Francisco, Boldt's first billion-dollar contract.
I think Boldt came in and just exhibited leadership. I believe without an integrated approach that Boldt brought to our project, it would have been nearly impossible to regroup. But I've seen collaboration in earnest in the environment where it really counts, where there's stress, where there's issues, where there's just critical things going on.
Boldt has a history of overcoming challenges.
The 2008-2009 recession was a very difficult period for our industry. And I don't think anyone in the industry, not anyone in the industry, could imagine how difficult it was going to be.
The Great Recession of 2008-2009 hammered the construction industry especially hard. But instead of having to make major layoffs, Boldt transferred staff from operations where work had dried up to its newly established and growing California offices. Its California business, a result of the strategic decision to move quickly into lean and to innovate, something Boldt calls bold thinking.
It's being allowed to say, I'm gonna go try this new thing and I'm gonna make it better. Oh my gosh, how empowering is that to have somebody tell you, go do it.
I think bold thinking is a very powerful image and message for our employees.
It promotes an entrepreneurial spirit and recognizes the value of each individual.
They really allow us to be able to grow as individuals again, understanding the fact that the company is going to continue to grow as long as the individuals continue to grow.
Bold thinking embraces technology and sustainability.
The diversity creates excitement within employees. It creates a healthy financial situation for us because we're just not locked into one industry. So there's a lot of good from it, but it does come with challenges because you're always, needing to learn new things. You have learning the technologies of, for example, today one of the new ventures we have is that we're becoming the contractor of choice to install proton therapy equipment, which is the new way of targeting cancer cells. Who would have thought 5 years ago that we'd be installing equipment like that?
I truly believe that none of this would be possible without the blood, sweat, and tears of my ancestors. I mean, they had very, very difficult times. This survival or persevering is something that I think is a wonderful metaphor for America.
Martin, OJ, and Oscar took enormous risks and made many personal sacrifices to maintain and grow the Boldt Company. Today, Boldt's sales are more than $700 million, and the company ranks 77 on ENR's list of America's top contractors. Martin Boldt worked hard in the early 1900s to support his extended family. Today, Boldt supports the families of thousands of workers across the country, and its success allows the Boldts to enjoy philanthropy.
We're in a position now where there are profits that we have. We share a lot with our employees, but we also want to share in the communities in which we work.
While I'm proud of what we've achieved in the past, I'm even more proud of what our people are doing today to contribute to the community and to make a difference in the world in which we exist. I think it's important that we do something every day that we're proud of. I hope we'll continue to do that for another 125 years. Who knows, I may still be here.
The Boldt story, an example of American exceptionalism.
I personally have a lot to thank people for. Nobody can grow without help, and with good support and dedication of other people. And we were very fortunate in having just terrific people. You know, men don't usually hug each other, but you could go up and hug every one of them. The list is so long, I couldn't name them all, but rest assured that I'm grateful for what they did to make the company grow, and any success that I had really came from their involvement in making things happen. Our company has tried to be a good citizen in the area and in the state and the country, and it's a way of our saying thank you for what we've experienced and enjoyed. I would say I don't smile normally, but I can smile. And I try to convey to them our appreciation.